What is this little maid's girl doing so close to my painting? Step away from it before you breathe on the canvas. Mrs. Victoria Langford's voice cracked through the marble hall like a whip, slicing the soft hum of polite conversation in the Whitmore Gallery. She stood near the centerpiece of the night's private exhibition, a newly acquired Monet valued at $12 million, her diamond necklace catching the golden light as she pointed toward a terrified young girl in a faded uniform. The girl froze, her small hand still clutching a feather duster. Her name was Elena Morales, 12 years old, the daughter of the night maid. Her dark curls framed a face that had seen far more exhaustion than a child ever should. I'm sorry, ma'am, she stammered, her voice trembling. I was just what? Langford snapped, taking a sharp step forward. Admiring art you'll never understand? Do you have any idea how much this painting is worth? Laughter flickered through the room, soft, superior, the sound of money mocking poverty. At the far end, Lucia Morales, Elena's mother, dropped her mop bucket and rushed forward, her eyes wide with panic. Mrs. Langford, please. She didn't mean, then teach your daughter to know her place, Langford hissed. This is an exhibition, not a playground for the help. The words hung in the air, cruel, deliberate, and heavy with humiliation. Guests looked away, pretending to sip champagne, unwilling to interfere. The museum curator, Dr. Hargrove, coughed awkwardly and avoided Lucia's gaze, but Elena didn't move. She stared up at the painting, the supposed Monet, her eyes narrowing. Something wasn't right. Her heart pounded as she studied the brushstrokes, the direction of the light, the unnatural warmth of the yellow pigments. She knew this style. She'd seen something like it before, not in a museum, but in a dusty storage room where her mother once cleaned canvases for a restoration specialist. And then it hit her. This painting, she whispered, voice barely audible. It's not real. Langford blinked. What did you just say? Elena's throat tightened. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. That painting is a fake. For a moment, the room was utterly silent, as if the air itself refused to move. Then came the laughter, sharp, cruel, disbelieving. Did you hear that? One of the guests sneered. The maid's daughter thinks she's an art critic. Langford's expression twisted. You insolent little girl! Do you realize what you're accusing me of? Elena's small fists clenched. I'm not accusing you, ma'am. I'm just saying Monet never used Naples yellow in 1893. The pigment didn't exist in his palette then. The laughter died again. A few heads turned, uncertain now. Dr. Hargrove frowned, his professional curiosity piqued. That's quite a specific claim. How do you know that? Elena swallowed hard. Because I've read about it. In the catalog you keep in the storage room. The one you said was too damaged to display. Langford scoffed. You read it? Oh, how adorable. The little maid reads art books while her mother scrubs the floor. Her voice dripped with sarcasm, but the cruelty only made Elena stand straighter. I read them because I love art, she said softly. And because truth doesn't care where it's found. Dr. Hargrove hesitated. He turned to one of the technicians nearby. Get me a UV light now! Mrs. Langford's head snapped toward him. Don't you dare indulge this nonsense. I said get it. Within seconds, the lights dimmed. The crowd leaned forward as the technician ran the violet glow across the canvas. And there, faint but unmistakable, under the paint's surface, a hidden scrawl appeared. Not Claude Monet, but A. Dubois, a name known only in whispers among restorers, the signature of a man once caught forging 19th-century masterpieces. Gasps erupted. A camera clicked. Someone muttered, My God, she's right. Mrs. Langford's face drained of color. This must be a mistake. Elena stepped closer, trembling but fearless. It's not a mistake, ma'am. The brushwork's wrong, too. Monet painted from the left. This artist was right-handed. You can tell by the curve of the strokes. Her mother stood frozen, one hand over her mouth, tears streaming silently. Dr. Whitmore, the gallery's elderly founder, slowly rose from his seat. His voice was calm but heavy with awe. Young lady, what is your name? Elena Morales, sir. He nodded slowly. Miss Morales, I believe you just saved this institution from the biggest scandal in its history. A stunned hush fell. Reporters began whispering. Guests exchanged nervous glances. Langford's diamond earring caught the light as she turned, fury flooding her features. "You have no idea what you've done," she spat. "Oh, she knows exactly what she's done," Dr. Whitmore replied quietly. "She's told the truth." Elena blinked as the room swirled with whispers and flashes. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, her mother gripping her shoulders tightly. For years she had cleaned these rooms in silence, unseen, unnoticed. Tonight her voice had shattered that silence forever, and somewhere deep down, beneath the fear and adrenaline, a quiet realization began to take root. This wasn't just about one painting. It was about power, truth, and a secret that reached far beyond anything she could imagine. The gallery's silence shattered into noise. Chairs scraped, voices overlapped. Cameras clicked like a swarm of mechanical insects as whispers rippled through the marble hall. "Did you hear her? She proved it. Langford bought a forgery. Wasn't that painting insured for $12 million? Every word felt like a bullet ricocheting off the walls. Mrs. Langford stood rigid in the center of it all, her jeweled clutch trembling in her hand. The color had drained from her face, leaving only fury. "This is absurd." "That painting came from a private collector in Paris, verified by experts." Dr. Whitmore's voice carried above the noise, and yet the evidence speaks for itself. He turned toward the technician still holding the UV lamp. "Document everything. Seal the exhibit room immediately." The command sliced through the panic like a blade. 2 guards hurried to block off the entryway. Guests pulled out their phones despite the staff's protests. Elena clung to her mother's arm. Her knees were shaking, but she didn't back down. She could still feel the weight of Langford's glare on her. Sharp, poisonous, and unrelenting. "You," Langford hissed, stepping closer. "You think humiliating me will make you special? You'll regret this, little girl." Lucia quickly stepped in front of her daughter. "Please, Mrs. Langford, she didn't mean to." "Enough!" Langford's voice snapped like thunder. "You'll both be out of this place before the night ends. I'll see to it personally." Dr. Whitmore's tone cooled the air. "No one is dismissing anyone tonight." He looked directly at Elena. "Not until we understand how this forgery found its way here." The crowd shifted. For the first time, the attention wasn't on Mrs. Langford's diamonds or her reputation. It was on the tiny girl who'd seen what no expert had. Security escorted the guests into the adjoining hall. Reporters were already calling their editors, whispering the words "fake Monet" and "Langford scandal" into their phones. Inside the sealed room, only a handful remained. Dr. Whitmore, Dr. Hargrove, 2 technicians, Lucia, Elena, and Mrs. Langford, fuming like a cornered predator. Hargrove cleared his throat. "If what the girl says is correct, we need to analyze the pigments immediately," Langford scoffed. "You'll waste time and destroy my property over a child's imagination?" Whitmore fixed her with a look that made her quiet. "Truth doesn't care for social rank, Victoria. It demands proof." He motioned to the technician. "Run a microsample test. Now!" As the man carefully scraped a fragment from the edge of the canvas, Elena's heart thudded in her chest. She hadn't meant to start a war, she just couldn't stay silent. Lucia crouched beside her. "Mi vida," she whispered, voice trembling. "Why did you say that?" "We could lose everything." Elena swallowed hard. "Because it was wrong, Mama. You always say lies make stains that never wash out." Her mother's eyes glistened. "Yes, but the truth has teeth." Minutes dragged. The technician looked up from the microscope. "Synthetic titanium white. Manufactured after 1920. Monet died in 1926. A gasp. Langford's hand flew to her mouth. Dr. Hargrove exhaled sharply. "It's confirmed. The painting's a 20th century imitation." Whitmore nodded slowly, then turned to Langford. "You purchased a forgery, Victoria, and from what I recall, you used the museum's trust to back the acquisition." The implication landed like a hammer. Embezzlement. Fraud. Langford straightened, forcing a brittle smile. I will not be slandered by staff or street children. I demand counsel. Then you'd better find good one, Whitmore interrupted. He looked at Elena again. Young lady, may I ask, how did you see it? Elena hesitated. All eyes were on her. The light, she said softly. Monet painted like the sun was breathing. But this one, it's pretending. The light doesn't feel alive. Hargrove blinked, astonished. That's remarkably accurate. Langford's mask cracked. So what? The girl got lucky. Whitmore turned to Lucia. Is it true you both work nights here? Lucia nodded hesitantly. I clean the restoration room, sir. Sometimes Elena waits for me and reads the books. A faint smile crossed Whitmore's face. Then perhaps the girl has a gift, and perhaps we've been blind to it. By dawn, the mansion gallery buzzed like a crime scene. Investigators arrived. The painting was taken for authentication. Elena and her mother were escorted out through the side entrance, past flashing lights and murmuring reporters. Lucia kept her head low, but Elena couldn't resist one last glance back. From the window, she saw Mrs. Langford arguing with two men in suits. Her gestures were wild, desperate. For the first time, the woman who'd treated them like furniture looked small. Outside, a light drizzle had begun to fall. The night air smelled of rain and lemon polish. Elena shivered. Are we going to get fired, Mama? Lucia pulled her close. Maybe, but you did the right thing. Elena nodded, though doubt gnawed at her. She didn't know that by morning her name would be everywhere. She didn't know the Langfords would call in lawyers, journalists, and even the man who'd sold them the fake painting, a man with a dangerous reason to stay hidden. She only knew that something enormous had been set in motion, and the world she'd grown up quietly cleaning was about to turn on its head. By the next morning, the news had exploded. 12 million painting exposed as forgery by Maid's 12-year-old daughter. The headline flashed across every major network, from Paris to New York. Talk shows debated it. Art critics argued about the girl's natural intuition. And deep within the corridors of the Whitmore mansion, panic rippled like an unseen current. Dr. Whitmore sat at his mahogany desk, the day's newspapers spread before him. Every headline bore the same image, Elena, half hidden behind her mother, her wide eyes reflecting the chaos around her. He sighed. They've turned her into a sensation overnight. Dr. Hargrove rubbed his temples. And Langford's threatening to sue the museum for defamation. She's already calling this a setup. Whitmore leaned back. Let her. The evidence is undeniable. But what neither man realized yet, what no one did, was that the painting's truth reached far beyond one socialite's humiliation. It was part of something deeper, something meant to stay hidden. That afternoon, Lucia and Elena were called back to the mansion. The staff corridor buzzed with whispers as they walked past, some admiring, some resentful. She's the girl from the news. Can you believe it? A Maid's kid catching what experts missed? Or maybe it was all luck. Elena kept her gaze on the polished floors, her small hands gripping her backpack straps. When they reached Whitmore's office, he greeted them gently. Please sit down, Lucia hesitated. Sir, if this is about last night, it is, Whitmore said softly. But not for the reasons you think. He gestured toward the desk. Laid out before them were photos, close-ups of several paintings from the Langford collection. We re-examined every piece purchased from that same dealer. 4 more appear to be forgeries, Lucia gasped. 4? Whitmore nodded grimly. And all worth millions. Elena's eyes widened. So it wasn't just the Monet? No, he met her gaze. Whoever painted these knew exactly what they were doing. The brushwork, the aging chemicals, the varnish, all masterfully deceptive. Except, his eyes softened, except the light. You were right. The light gives it away. Elena looked down, unsure how to respond. I just noticed, Whitmore smiled faintly. Genius often starts with noticing. Across town, in a shadowed office above an antiques shop, another man read the same headlines and didn't smile. Victor Desmarais had built his fortune on precision, flawless forgeries that passed through customs, auctions and private galleries unnoticed. He was a ghost in the art world, known only by whispers, And now, one little girl had undone years of his work with a single sentence. He crushed the newspaper in his fist, fury coiling beneath his calm. "Find her," he muttered to his associate. "I want to know how she saw through it." The man nodded. "And if she talks?" Victor's eyes turned cold. "Then she stops." Back at the mansion, Elena wandered through the quiet gallery. The once pristine room was now stripped bare. Empty frames leaned against the wall, evidence tags fluttering from gilt edges. To her, the silence felt sad. Like a secret had been ripped out, and the room was trying to breathe again. Lucia joined her. "We should go, Carino. Dr. Whitmore says they'll call us if they need more questions." Elena nodded, but her gaze caught on something, a painting still hanging near the staircase. A landscape, muted and dull, easily overlooked. She frowned. "Mama, that one doesn't belong." Lucia blinked. "What do you mean? The others were removed, but it's wrong." She stepped closer, squinting. The signature in the corner was faint, but the looping V caught her eye. "That mark, it's the same as on the Monet's frame." Lucia's pulse quickened. "You think—" Before she could finish, footsteps echoed behind them. Dr. Whitmore stood there, holding a phone. His expression was unreadable. "Elena," he said quietly, "you may have just uncovered more than you realize." Within hours, agents from Interpol arrived. They photographed every inch of the painting Elena had spotted. Beneath layers of artificial aging varnish, they found microtagging consistent with stolen works smuggled through a forgery network stretching from Amsterdam to Hong Kong. Elena's single observation had cracked open an international scandal. Lucia stood frozen beside her daughter as officials swarmed the room. "This is too much," she whispered. "We don't belong in this world, Elena." Elena's voice was steady. "Maybe that's why we can see what they can't." That night, as rain swept across the city, Whitmore sat alone in his study. Watching the news coverage unfold, the reporter's voice filled the room. A 12-year-old girl identified a string of forged artworks linked to an international criminal network. Experts believe the discovery could reshape global authentication standards. He turned the TV off and looked at the small notebook on his desk, the one Elena had carried the night before, filled with sketches and notes written in cramped handwriting. He smiled to himself. She doesn't even know what she started. Meanwhile, in a quiet apartment on the city's edge, Lucia tucked Elena into bed. But her daughter couldn't sleep. The shadows on the ceiling looked like brushstrokes moving in the dark. "Mama," she whispered, "what if they come after us?" Lucia's heart clenched. She brushed a strand of hair from Elena's face. "Then we'll be ready. You have truth on your side, mi vida, and truth always shines, even when it's dangerous." Outside, a car slowed near their building. Headlights flashed across the window, and though they didn't know it yet, someone was already watching. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. Every drop against the window reminded Lucia that peace, for now, was a borrowed luxury. Elena sat at the kitchen table, her notebook open, tracing the faint outlines of the forger's signature again and again. She didn't know why she kept drawing it, only that something about it bothered her. The looping V wasn't just a letter. It was a symbol. "Mama," she said softly, "look at this." Lucia turned from the stove, drying her hands on her apron. "Again, mi amor? You've been staring at that thing all day." "I know," Elena murmured, "but the slant on the brushstroke, it's identical to one in a painting I saw last week." "The one with the riverbank?" Lucia frowned. "The one in the storage room?" Elena nodded. "If I'm right, it's the same artist." Before Lucia could respond, a knock echoed through the small apartment. 3 slow taps. Too deliberate to be a neighbor, Lucia stiffened. "Stay here," she whispered, walking to the door. Through the peephole, she saw a tall man in a charcoal suit, rain dripping from his hat brim. When she opened the door slightly, he flashed a badge. "Interpol, Mrs. Alvarez?" he asked. "Yes. I'm Agent Moreau. I need to speak with your daughter." Lucia's heart clenched. "Has she done something wrong?" The man shook his head. "On the contrary, she's done something extraordinary." Inside, Moreau laid out photographs across their table, each one a painting from different private collections across Europe. These all share the same pigment compound you and your daughter helped identify. Titanium white with synthetic binders, impossible for authentic works from the 1800s. Elena's eyes darted over the photos. "This one," she said suddenly, pointing to a landscape. "That brush pattern, the light direction, it's wrong. The artist, it's credited to painted from left to right, but here it goes the opposite way." Agent Moreau's brows lifted. "You're certain?" Elena nodded. "Completely," he smiled faintly. "You just confirmed what our lab spent 2 weeks proving." Lucia watched, torn between awe and fear. "Why are you showing us this?" "Because," Moreau said carefully, "your daughter didn't just spot a fake painting. She exposed an entire laundering operation, a network selling forged masterpieces to fund high-level crimes. And the man behind it?" He paused, lowering his voice. "Doesn't take kindly to being exposed." Lucia's stomach turned. "You mean he might?" Moreau met her eyes. "You both need protection. Effective immediately." That night, as they packed essentials into a single bag, Elena glanced at her mother. "Mama, are we running away?" Lucia hesitated, then knelt beside her. "No, cariño. We're being moved somewhere safe, just for a little while." Elena's voice wavered. "But I didn't mean to make trouble." Lucia cupped her face gently. "You didn't make trouble. You told the truth. And sometimes, the truth makes dangerous people angry." A car waited outside, black, unmarked, headlights slicing through the misty rain. Agent Moreau opened the back door. "You'll be under federal supervision until we neutralize the threat." As they drove away, Elena watched the city fade behind fogged glass. The glow of the Whitmore mansion flickered in the distance, like a candle about to go out. Meanwhile, across town, Victor Desmarais stood before a massive painting in his private studio, a near-perfect replica of a lost Degas. He stared at it in silence, smoke curling from the cigarette between his fingers. "Interpol knows," his assistant said nervously. "They're tracking the pigment shipments. One of the suppliers in Brussels already flipped." Victor exhaled slowly. "I built this empire over 20 years. No one destroys it because a child saw a trick of the light." "What do you want us to do about her?" Victor's eyes narrowed. "I want her silenced, permanently." The assistant hesitated. "She's just a kid." Victor's voice turned cold. "She's the only one who's ever beaten me." The next morning, their safe house was a remote estate in the countryside, a place Elena immediately recognized. "Mama, this is Dr. Whitmore's summer villa." Lucia blinked in surprise. "He arranged this?" Dr. Whitmore appeared at the door, smiling wearily. "It's the least I can do. You've both risked everything for the truth. And now we're going to protect it, together." He led them inside to a small study lined with books and old documents. On the desk sat a folder marked Project V. Elena's curiosity flared. "What's that?" Whitmore looked between her and Moreau. "That, my dear, is the real mystery. These forgeries weren't just about money. They're part of something much bigger." He opened the folder, revealing coded letters, financial records, and one photograph that made Lucia gasp. It was Victor Desmarais. Standing beside one of the museum's largest donors, Elena whispered, "He's not just a forger. He's one of them." Whitmore nodded grimly. "Yes, and he's coming for anyone who threatens to expose him." Outside, thunder rolled across the valley, like the sky itself warning them of what was coming next. Elena looked out into the storm, the reflection of lightning flashing in her eyes. "Then we better be ready." The next morning, sunlight crept through the curtains of the old villa, but the air inside was thick with unease. Lucia hadn't slept. Every creak of the wooden floors, every flicker of headlights down the empty road made her heart pound. At the dining table, Agent Moreau spread out a series of photographs, documents, and shipping manifests. The pages looked ordinary, until you noticed the coded initials printed faintly on the bottom corners. V.D. Elena's sharp eyes caught it immediately. "Victor Desmarais," she said under her breath. Moreau nodded. "The signature of a man who's been rewriting art history from the shadows for 2 decades. He pointed to the first document, a shipment log from Antwerp. Each of these containers listed as restoration materials is actually filled with counterfeit canvases. They move them through private collectors, laundering hundreds of millions under the guise of legitimate transactions. Dr. Whitmore added quietly, and those transactions were blessed by some of the world's most respected art institutions, including mine. Lucia turned sharply. You mean people inside the museums knew? Whitmore's silence was answer enough. That afternoon, while the adults argued about evidence and strategy, Elena wandered into the villa's attic, a dusty maze of old crates and forgotten relics. Something in her gut told her the answers weren't all in the files. She brushed dust off a long wooden chest marked Archive 1872 Private. Inside lay rolls of canvas, pigment jars, and sketches. But what stopped her cold was a small photograph tucked inside an envelope. Two men stood beside an unfinished painting, and one of them was unmistakably Victor Desmarais. But the other, Elena's breath caught. It was Dr. Whitmore, decades younger. She ran downstairs, heart hammering, the photo shaking in her hand. "Dr. Whitmore?" she cried, bursting into the study. "Why is your picture here with him?" The room went dead silent. Whitmore looked at the photograph for a long time before speaking. "That was a long time ago," he said finally, "before I knew who he truly was." "Then explain it," Lucia demanded. "Because right now, it looks like you're part of this." "I was part of something," Whitmore admitted, lowering himself into his chair. 20 years ago, I worked with Victor on a restoration project in Paris. He was brilliant and reckless. He believed that art's value came from perception, not authenticity. He started experimenting, creating new works in old styles and passing them off as rediscoveries. "You mean he was already forging back then?" Moreau said grimly. Whitmore nodded. "Yes, I walked away when I realized how far he was willing to go. But he didn't stop. He built an empire on it." Elena looked down at the photo, her voice trembling. "So, all of this happened because you once trusted him?" Whitmore's face hardened. "Yes, and now it's my turn to make it right." Later that evening, Elena sat by the fire, flipping through the coded ledgers that Moreau had retrieved from a recent raid. Rows of numbers and symbols blurred together until she noticed something strange. Every few pages, a subtle pattern emerged in the placement of certain brush references. Cobalt blue number 4, 1895. Titanium white, sample 3. Each pigment entry repeated at precise intervals, too perfect to be random. Her mind began piecing it together like a puzzle. "These aren't inventory codes," she murmured. "They're coordinates." Moreau leaned over her shoulder. "Coordinates to what?" "Storage vaults," she said. "Hidden ones," he blinked. "How do you know?" She pointed at the pattern. "See the spacing? It matches the structure of GPS mapping grids. He's using pigment names as cipher keys." Whitmore's eyes widened. If she's right, those vaults could contain every forged painting he's ever sold. Elena nodded. "And maybe proof of who helped him." The room fell into tense silence. For the first time, the enormity of it all hit. Lucia, her little girl, the same one who used to trace shapes in the dust while she cleaned, had just decoded one of the world's most complex art. "Crimes. Can you locate the coordinates?" Moreau asked. Elena hesitated. "I can try." Whitmore fetched his laptop, and together they entered the data. Lines of numbers transformed into glowing red dots scattered across the map. Amsterdam, Milan, Geneva, New York, Cairo. 5 vaults. 5 continents. 1 operation. Moreau exhaled slowly. "He built a global empire right under our noses." Whitmore's voice shook. "And a 12-year-old girl just found it." Suddenly a loud crack shattered the night. "The villa's power went out! Get down!" Moreau shouted as glass exploded across the room. Gunfire ripped through the study windows. Precise, professional, merciless. Lucia pulled Elena to the ground, covering her with her arms. Outside, headlights flickered in the distance, 2 black vehicles blocking the main road. "They found us," Moreau hissed, drawing his weapon. Move now! Whitmore grabbed the map printouts and stuffed them into his coat. To the cellar, go! They raced through the hallway as bullets shredded the walls behind them. Elena clutched her mother's hand so tightly it hurt, her heart pounding with terror and clarity. The truth had finally surfaced, and now the people it threatened were coming to bury it. Down in the dark cellar, Whitmore sealed the door behind them, his voice trembling. "He's not trying to scare us," he whispered. "He's trying to erase us." Elena stared into the flickering emergency light, her mind still working furiously even as fear clawed at her chest. "He won't," she said softly. "Because I already sent everything." Lucia turned in shock. "You what?" Elena lifted her chin. "Before the power went out, I uploaded all the files to a public archive. Even if he destroys everything here, the truth's already out." For the first time, Whitmore smiled, a tired, proud smile. "You've just outplayed a man who's been outsmarting governments for years." Elena exhaled shakily. "Then let's make sure he knows it." Rain hammered against the cobblestones as dawn crept over the quiet hills of Provence. The villa was empty now, stripped bare after the night's chaos. But miles away, in an underground facility near Geneva, Victor Desmarais was watching the news feed on a massive monitor. Anonymous data leak exposes. Billion-dollar art forgery network tied to European elite. Interpol confirms investigation. Victor's hands clenched the edge of his desk. The veins on his temples throbbed. "That girl," he hissed. "That child ruined everything." Behind him, his assistant shifted uneasily. "Sir, we've secured the vaults in Amsterdam and Milan, but—" Victor spun around, eyes blazing. "But what?" "The files. She uploaded them to a global archive. It's mirrored across thousands of servers. We can't erase it." For a moment, silence. Then Victor laughed softly, cold, brittle, unhinged. "Then we changed the story." He turned back to the screen and pulled up Elena's photo, the one snapped by a journalist outside the villa ruins. The caption read, "Young girl who exposed elite forgery ring. She wants to play hero?" he murmured. "Let's see how the world feels when I make her the villain." Meanwhile, in a safe house outside Marseille, Elena sat cross-legged on the floor, her laptop open, surrounded by stacks of papers and an unfinished sketchbook. Lucia watched her daughter, tired, pale, but determined. The past week had been a blur of interrogations, headlines, and fear, but also hope. Every major outlet in Europe was covering the story. The maid's daughter had outwitted an empire. Dr. Whitmore entered quietly, carrying tea. "The authorities have intercepted half his network already," he said. "Interpol wants you both under protection until the trial." Elena looked up. "He won't stop." Whitmore nodded grimly. "No, which is why we can't hide forever." That evening, a knock echoed through the safe-house door. Agent Moreau entered, rain dripping from his coat. "He's resurfaced," he said. "Victor's issued a statement, accusing you, Dr. Whitmore, and your daughter of orchestrating the entire forgery ring." Lucia's jaw dropped. "What?" "He's claiming the girl fabricated evidence to blackmail him," Moreau continued. "He's bought reporters, hacked databases, even leaked edited footage." Elena's stomach turned. "He's twisting the truth. That's what men like him do," Moreau said. "But he made one mistake." Whitmore leaned forward. "What's that?" Moreau's lips curved. He underestimated how far a maid's daughter would go. 2 days later, the live broadcast. Victor Desmarais appeared on every major European network, standing before his signature collection of masterpieces. Elegant, confident, he spoke with the calm authority of a man used to control. "These accusations are absurd," he said smoothly. "A child's fantasy manipulated by desperate people seeking attention." Then his smug expression faltered. Because, mid-broadcast, the screens behind him flickered. For a brief, perfect second, his own voice played over the speakers, a recording Elena had uploaded to the archive. "Authenticity is a trick. Alain, perception is profit. The world believes what we tell it." Then another clip. Him bragging about paying off museum curators, forging records, laundering money. The audience gasped. Cameras flashed. The broadcast cut out, back in the safe house. Elena stared at the live stream's comments exploding across her screen. A Desmarais exposed. Forged empire. Maid's daughter. Truth Lucia covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes. You did it, baby. You actually did it. Elena smiled faintly. No, we did. Whitmore turned toward her. That file, the recording, how did you even find it? Elena opened her sketchbook. Between 2 pages was a flash drive taped beneath a sketch of a poppy field. I found it in one of his vaults, she said quietly. Hidden inside a frame labeled Portrait of Silence, Moreau chuckled. Well, silence just screamed. That night, the villa where it all began burned to the ground. Arson investigators confirmed it was deliberate. But the evidence, the confessions, the files, all were already in the hands of law enforcement worldwide. Victor Desmarais was arrested 2 weeks later at a private airstrip, trying to flee under a false name. He didn't resist. He just stared at the cameras with a ghost of a smile. You think she won? He whispered to a reporter. But the art world will forget her by next season. But they didn't. Within months, the story had sparked global reforms in art authentication and museum ethics. And at the Louvre, a small new exhibit appeared. The Eye That Saw Truth. At the center hung the once dismissed painting, now verified and restored. Its placard reading, donated by Lucia Alvarez and her daughter, Elena. Visitors stood for hours reading the story. Some cried, some smiled. But all left whispering the same thing. How a maid's daughter had spoken truth to power and changed history. Lucia stood in the crowd one afternoon, hand resting on her daughter's shoulder. Do you miss it? She asked softly. The quiet life? Elena looked up at the painting and the reflection of herself in its golden frame. No, she said, because this was never about art. It was about seeing what others refused to. The world moved slower now. At least that's how it felt to Lucia as she walked through the quiet streets of Paris, her daughter's hand in hers. The storm had passed, but the air still carried its memory. Billboards that once showed Victor Desmarais' smug face now displayed headlines in bold letters. The maid's daughter who brought down $1 billion lie. 12-year-old girl exposes the greatest art fraud in modern history. But for Lucia and Elena, fame was never the goal. Only truth. The press still camped outside their small apartment for weeks, trying to get a glimpse of the girl who had shaken Europe's elite. Elena would wave shyly, then disappear behind her mother, clutching her sketchbook like a shield. That sketchbook, the same one filled with fingerprints. Brushstroke patterns and coded notes now sat inside a glass case at the Musée d'Orsay, labeled The Journal That Changed the Art World inside the museum. Months later, Elena stood quietly before the case, tracing the reflection of her own hand against the glass. Tourists whispered around her, snapping photos. She barely heard them. Dr. Whitmore stood a few steps back, speaking with a museum curator. She doesn't realize it yet, he said softly, but what she's done will outlive every name in this room. Lucia smiled faintly. She never wanted recognition, Whitmore nodded. That's why she deserves it. Elena turned to them. Can I show you something? They followed her to a small side gallery, where a new collection was being prepared for display. Hidden eyes, unseen artists of the working class. Every piece had been created by people like her mother. Cleaners, cooks, factory workers, who'd sketched in secret, painted after night shifts, sculpted with scraps of clay and time. Each label began the same way. Artist previously employed as... Lucia stopped in front of a portrait of a woman holding a feather duster like a sword. Underneath, the label read, Lucia Alvarez, housekeeper, dreamer, mother. Her eyes filled instantly. You didn't... I did, Elena said softly. You spent years helping others shine. I wanted people to see you, too. Lucia pulled her daughter close, tears slipping down her cheeks. You always saw what others missed. Weeks later, a letter arrives. It was from the Royal Academy of Arts, London. Elena had been offered an honorary scholarship to study art authentication under their global mentorship program. She'd be the youngest student in their history. Lucia read the letter twice before she dared to believe it was real. Elena just smiled quietly like she'd been expecting it all along. "I don't want to leave you, Mama," she whispered. Lucia knelt, cupping her daughter's face. "You're not leaving me, mi amor. You're carrying everything we've ever dreamed of. Across the world." The ripple effect was enormous. Museums that had long dismissed underqualified staff began reevaluating their teams. Security guards with sharp memories, janitors with secret sketchbooks, assistants with deep art knowledge, all were suddenly being heard. One headline read, "The Maid's Daughter Revolution." How a child changed hiring in the art world forever. Interpol's case files confirmed over $400 million in stolen or forged art recovered, all traced back to Victor's empire. And yet, beyond the numbers and fame, Elena's legacy was something smaller. Gentler, a letter from a girl in Argentina, a video message from a janitor in Tokyo, a postcard from a boy in Detroit who loved to draw but never thought he was good enough. Each message said the same thing. "You made me believe I could matter too." Back in Paris, on the anniversary of her discovery, Elena returned to the gallery where everything began. The same polished floors, the same chandeliers. But this time, no one sneered. A quiet crowd followed her as she stopped before the painting that had started it all. The Girl with the Blue Veil. It now hung in its rightful place, authenticated and restored. Next to it, a new plaque read, "Originally identified as a forgery by a maid's daughter, later proven authentic by her discovery. Dedicated to the power of truth and the eyes that see it." Lucia stood beside her, pride swelling in her chest. "This is your story," she whispered. Elena shook her head gently. "No, Mama, it's ours." Later that night, as they walked home, the city lights reflected on the wet streets, turning puddles into tiny mirrors. Elena looked down at them, her reflection shimmering beside her mother's. "Do you think people will ever stop judging by what they see?" she asked. Lucia smiled sadly. "Maybe not. But as long as there's someone brave enough to look deeper, like you, there's hope." Elena nodded slowly. "Then I'll keep looking." The night was quiet, but in that silence there was strength, the kind that comes from truth, not power. 1 year later, the Louvre's Grand Hall shimmered under golden light as camera flashes pulsed like fireflies. But tonight wasn't about a new painting. It was about a new perspective. On stage stood a now 13-year-old girl in a modest navy dress, her curls pinned back, her voice steady but soft. Behind her, projected on a massive screen, was the title of her talk, "The Eyes That See." Elena Alvarez took a slow breath before speaking. "A year ago," she began, "I was told that my hands didn't belong near fine art, that knowledge had a dress code, that my mother's job defined who I was allowed to be." The audience, critics, curators, and art historians, sat in still silence. "But truth," she continued, "doesn't ask where you come from. It only asks if you're brave enough to see it." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Quiet admiration, unspoken awe. "I didn't set out to expose a $12 million lie. I just wanted people to look closer, not just at paintings, but at people." She gestured toward the first few rows where her mother sat, tears shimmering under the soft light. Because sometimes the janitor sees what the director misses. Sometimes the waitress holds wisdom the world ignores. And sometimes the maid's daughter recognizes a masterpiece that everyone else calls worthless. The applause came slowly at first, one pair of hands, then another until the hall thundered with it. Weeks later, across the globe, clips from Elena's speech went viral. Millions watched as she told her story, her quiet conviction cutting deeper than any headline. News outlets dubbed it the Elena Effect. Museums across 23 countries launched programs to train and promote talent from working-class backgrounds. Universities began offering experience-based admission pathways, evaluating ability over pedigree. A message appeared on her social media feed one morning. It read, "I'm a janitor in New York. I used to paint on old pizza boxes because I couldn't afford canvas. Your story made me pick up the brush again. Thank you for seeing people like me." Elena smiled, typing back quietly. "Keep painting. The world needs your colors." Back home, the Whitmore Foundation had fully sponsored her education. By day, Elena studied art authentication with leading experts. By night, she and her mother hosted free weekend classes for children from working families, kids who'd been told their dreams were too expensive. Each Saturday, the small community center buzzed with laughter and paint splatters. The walls soon filled with drawings, messy, bright, full of hope. Lucia hung one of Elena's first sketches beside the door. Below it, she'd written in careful script, "Brilliance doesn't ask for permission. It just needs recognition." Final scene, 2 years later. Elena stood before the same gallery where everything began. But now, her badge read, Elena Alvarez, Junior Curator and Art Forensics Trainee. The chandeliers still glimmered. The marble floors still shone. But the whispers were different now, respectful, curious, warm. A group of children stood nearby on a school tour. One little girl stared up at the painting and whispered, "It looks real." Elena knelt beside her. "It is," she said with a smile, because someone finally looked close enough to see the truth. As the visitors moved on, Elena remained for a moment, gazing at the girl with the blue veil. Its colors seemed richer now. Alive. Free. Her mother's reflection appeared beside her in the glass. Lucia whispered, "Do you ever wonder why you noticed what no one else did?" Elena smiled faintly. "Because I wasn't looking for what it was worth. I was looking for what it meant." The lights dimmed. The gallery grew quiet. Outside, Paris hummed with life. A city of unseen artists, unheard stories, and undiscovered brilliance. And somewhere, another child was picking up a pencil, believing for the first time that their eyes, too, could see what others missed.